The year was 26. Half-Life 2 Episode 1 just released, the whole that is Twitter just got launched, but most importantly, PopCap published a tiny game called Feeding Frenzy. And no, I am not talking about this strange music video by Within the Ruins. Feeding Frenzy, Shipwreck Showdown to be specific, is an eat-em-up game created by Sprout Games, likely one of the pioneers of the genre, published by PopCap. Yes, the studio that made Plants vs. Zombies. It is about this little fish who eats other fish, becoming bigger fish, eating even bigger fish, and becoming the king of the ocean. Wait, are we just playing a war simulator? Despite its many bugs and flaws, it has quite an addictive gameplay loop, structured in a series of levels with changing characters. This concept was actually first used in a prequel. We do not talk about the prequel. We begin our journey as Boris, a tiny butterfly fish in shallow waters. Every single level consists of a simple progression mechanic, being able to eat only the smallest fish to grow bigger, eating the bigger fish to grow massive, and finally terrorizing every fish in the vicinity of your monitor. Since the game is made in the early 2000s, it is obsessed with high scores, as everything, and I mean everything you do, increases your score, be it gobbling up these strange stars and bubbles, or literally stealing a pearl from a clam. Hell, even subscribing and joining the Patreon will increase your score. To prevent you from getting bored, the game occasionally throws these bonus levels at you as well, where a specific task needs to be done before the timer runs out. In this case, eating all of these tiny fish as fast as possible. And while these bonus levels seem kind of fun in theory, they definitely do get boring after a while. Also, if you manage to finish a level without dying, a mermaid will spawn. I can't believe I am saying this, but this fish has more riz than me. It is not until level 5 that we finally get our first glimpse into the story, as these shallow waters seem to be housing some unwelcomed guests. This leads us into having to dodge this leopard shark, ramping up the difficulty and showing some problems with the game, those being mainly janky hitboxes and off-screen deaths. Some of the hitboxes of the bigger fish tend to be much larger than what they should be, and this shark can also spawn off-screen, which causes you to be eaten immediately, forcing you to avoid the edges and play in the middle at all times. This is unfortunately a problem that persists throughout the entire game, and this level is a perfect example of that issue. And just as we are about to move on, this happens. I remember being a kid and seeing this for the first time. It really creeped me out. It is probably one of the origin points of my fear of the ocean, despite how goofy and even underwhelming it feels today with the music. At the time, this felt dangerous and different from the rest of the game. This creature is known as the Intruder, a mysterious alien fish that seems to be causing all sorts of disturbances in the water. It is our goal to stop it, and the mantle has been handed over to Layla the Triggerfish. This is where we get the strongest ability in the game, the suck, allowing us to pull as many fish as possible from afar, letting us grow much faster than usual. Of course, it comes with a downside of being able to pull hazards as well, so using it requires thinking, something I'm not very good at. New threats also emerge, like the goofy barracuda, a very dangerous fish that even has a warning indicator for when it is about to show up. You can do a tail bite on this thing to get some extra score, but I always found it too RNG heavy and not worth doing, especially with the way it turns without warning. Another power-up is the magic mushroom, clearing the screen off of the bigger fish and allowing us to eat them. And finally, we get to see why the game is called Shipwreck Showdown, as we reach one ourselves ready to explore it. This is where I want to emphasize another problem Feeding Frenzy has, and that is reskins. This whole level is just the cod and the humhead swapping places on the food chain, with only their color being changed. In fact, it gets so bad that I doubt many of these fish even exist in real life. I don't necessarily understand why this was done. Maybe there was some sort of hardware limitation back then, or the developers lacked enough funding to get more original sprites done, but maybe they were just lazy, and I can't really blame them honestly. The story kicks off more when we are informed that the humans are throwing mines in the water for whatever reason, causing disturbance in the local wildlife on our way to Hunter's Cavern. After another encounter with the Intruder, we take control of Eddie the Angler as the gameplay turns into Don't Starve. These levels are pretty pretty interesting, probably the most interesting ones in fact. We have to eat plankton to keep our light levels up, as if we don't, the entire screen goes black with a much higher likelihood of being devoured. While the backgrounds don't really fit this vibe of the light constantly going out, and I wish there were more mechanics with the angler itself, I still think it's an interesting twist that is quite enjoyable. These are also the shortest levels, as after just 4 we take control of Peter the Pompano, who is actually the exact same species of fish as the one we have been eating in the angler segment. I really like the vibe of these levels. The green-hued background with the shipwreck feels very distant and different from everything else, as we seem to be heading into deeper and more dangerous waters. The cuttlefish are also introduced here, being able to basically poop on you and make your movement feel shitty for a while. It's also when we are introduced to the best power-up, Feeding Fury. Yeah, very original, but being able to eat every single fish on our screen. Unfortunately, with this comes the most annoying and difficult obstacle, the poisonous fish. If you eat them on accident, which you will, they make you completely unable to consume any other fish while reversing your controls until the effect runs out. Thankfully, you can just spam click to get rid of this effect. Didn't think I would have to whip out my trusty Minecraft PvP skills, but here we are. Repeating backgrounds is another strange design choice, as this shipwreck is actually repeated a lot of times despite being introduced every single time as a new shipwreck we found. I don't know why more backgrounds weren't made, and it's a bit of a shame. After the Pompano, we take control of the Humphead, Harry, another fish we have been eating so far. The first thing we see in these new levels are the Veer reskins and of course the legendary swordfish. God, I love swordfish. These are probably the most boring levels. There is no new mechanic introduced other than these stupid pelicans which plague the surface, where you are very rarely encouraged to go anyway. This all culminates with the fact that we are just playing as a fish we have already encountered many times, making it the weakest and most boring point of the game. Pufferfish get introduced slowly after to make this a bit more interesting, as they're the only enemy with the ability to take off points off your score, making them a bit funny but also obnoxious to deal with due to their unpredictable nature. The repetitive levels at this point get a bit questionable, as all we're really doing is going on a massive goose chase around the ocean searching for the intruder, without making much progress on uncovering the story either. This is all kind of funny when I think about it. I am criticizing a game I used to play when I was like 7. Thankfully, the character and the levels that come after this are the best, featuring Goliev the shark. And if that is not badass, I don't know what is. We are also told that the area we're currently in is home to an underwater human lab. Although when we go to the actual level, the lab is destroyed and abandoned. What is going on here? The levels with the shark are for a good reason, likely the hardest. This is because you have the biggest hitbox out of all the playable characters, and it's where I really don't mind that disadvantage. We literally get big enough to gobble up orcas. It makes sense that our character has to be like half the size of the screen to handle that. After a bit of playtime, we're informed that the lab has been wrecked by something. Obviously, humans have also been dropping mines in the water to the highest extent for unknown purposes, and then the entire ocean grows silent. It is only you and the deafening silence of the water. It's kind of calming, but also a bit unnerving. But then, a boss battle starts. The intruder is a very easy yet kind of welcoming boss in the limitations of a game like this. All you're really meant to do is bite its antenna, which the game calls a tail. Wow. Lead it to a mine and consume the mushrooms to take down its hit points. Repeat this a couple of times and it gets smaller, before being chased off by our shark. We are now led back through all the characters we used to play, fighting the intruder over and over while it gets some new abilities that honestly make it even easier than before. These fights can obviously get a bit repetitive. Unfortunately, they are quite easy to compensate for that. The real challenge comes from the levels before the boss, those being having to get bigger once more while your entire screen is covered in fish. Every character gets to fight the alien, except for one, Eddie the Angler. I heard this is because the developers could not find a way to make the fight work with the jellyfish in the level, which is absolutely hilarious, as it would have been a great way to twist the boss battle in a better direction. The game even has a really lame excuse for this. I don't know why they didn't just remove the jellyfish or make the intruder not collide with them. Really strange. This level with the triggerfish is my least favorite. The whole screen is covered with bigger fish than you, with too many hazards to watch out for and too little power-ups. Getting through it was a nightmare nightmare, and I am very thankful I never have to do it again. At the end, we are back to Boris, when we are informed that the alien is actually preparing for a spawning cycle, and if we do not stop it, the whole ocean and in turn the planet will be doomed. This leads us to a decently designed final level compared to the one I just spoke about. We are small enough to the point where we can dodge these insane amounts of fish on the screen in multiple ways, and it is actually a more reasonable challenge before the end. The last fight with the boss is of course quite easy, but we are back to where it all began, and it ties the game nicely as Boris is finally able to eat the intruder. Unfortunately, that's kind of it. There are no credits, no indications that we can beat the game other than this trophy, and worst of all, no explanations on the actual story. Why were the humans dropping mines in the ocean? What was the human lab even used for, and who destroyed it? Just who is the intruder? When I was a kid, all of these questions didn't really matter to me because I, of course, didn't care. I just wanted to eat some fish and have fun for what was at the time a very good gameplay loop. But to be honest, these are some very questionable decisions by the developers of the game, and now we are going to try to answer some of those questions. It looks like the intruder was going to multiply somehow thanks to his spawning cycle, and doom the entire planet in the process, already making the story kind of strange and even dark for such a colorful and vibrant game. We don't know how the intruder came to be and where it even came from, and the lab we see in the levels with the shark was already destroyed by the time we got there, although we are never told who destroyed it, what the purpose of that lab actually was, and the motive behind the destruction. This is where my crackpot theory comes in, because it's actually likely that the intruder was created in this underwater lab, probably as some sort of testing experiment, breaking out in the process and destroying the lab, doing what it knew how to do, reproducing. This may also explain why the humans are constantly throwing mines in the water. They have been informed of this experiment and are trying to kill the intruder before the whole planet gets corrupted and destroyed. Or they're just having a massive war out there. I don't know. Feeding Frenzy is an interesting game. It is rare that a game like this even tries to tell a story, even more so about humanity and the consequences a strange fish may have had on the larger world. This game definitely had some sort of impact on my love for the ocean and at the same time, fear of it. The broken down lab, the shipwrecks, and overall the atmosphere the intruder provides made the game kind of unsettling and even creepy to play sometimes as a kid. But at the same time, it is also cozy. I remember showing it to my neighbors once and just had a blast playing it with a great soundtrack. It reminds me of a time when there was nothing to worry about and no responsibilities to take care of. The internet and general computers themselves were filled with the fruitiger Aero vibe, and the game itself kind of has that going for it as well. It doesn't seem like Sprout Games released anything after Feeding Frenzy. I don't know what happened to them, nor do I know if they even make games anymore. Maybe there was meant to be a third game someday, due to the game being called Shipwreck Showdown, but that never came into fruition. Even if they aren't, I am glad that this little fish game is still remembered in some way. It actually has quite an active modding scene, mainly with expansions of the game to feature more levels and characters. But there are also strange and even unsettling mods, which just like the Plants vs Zombies mods, feature real-life imagery that doesn't belong in the cartoonish art style. But I think that's a topic for another day. By the way, the intruder becomes a playable character after the ending. I love this. Thank you for joining me for this nostalgic trip. I swear to God, the next video will be about Half-Life. If you've enjoyed, consider subscribing and checking out my Patreon to find exclusive videos and a Discord server. And as usual, have a good night.